Elon Musk just confirming that Tesla's Robotaxi service in Austin will be open access, e.g. anyone in the public can use the service, not just invite only, next month. This is an extremely positive sign. I've also seen a few price comparisons starting to appear for Tesla's Robotaxi service versus some of the so-called competition on X. We're going to take a look at those in detail now. Keeping in mind, it's extremely early days. I wouldn't read into this too much, but I am here to tell you that Tesla has a massive cost advantage at scale with autonomy that no one's going to be able to compete with, ultimately resulting in most companies going bankrupt trying to compete with cost per mile when Tesla's at scale. That said, here's an example of pricing on a very short trip, 1.36 miles. Tesla Robotaxi cost $3.84. Uber, roughly triple, $9.93. Waymo, clearly Waymo expensive, more than $20, and Lyft, a little under $11. Also worth noting, all of the trips available in Tesla Robotaxis occur in their brand new Model Ys, the world's best-selling vehicle, super comfortable as well. A premium vehicle with a budget price, hard to compete with that. We just heard earlier, Tesla Robotaxi service in Austin will be available to the general public starting next month. Not long until their Robotaxi service has launched in numerous cities throughout the US and is also available to customers in the general public, not just invite only. What happens when Tesla has enough vehicles on roads to undercut Uber, Waymo? I mean, holy shit, dude. Look at that, $384 versus nearly $22. What if Tesla can undercut these companies, yet have comparable wait times for a comparable service? The answer to that question is consumers who aren't stupid are most likely going to favor the comparable service offered at a fraction of the cost, meaning Uber, Waymo, Lyft, if they actually want to continue doing what they do, picking up and dropping off paying customers, they will need to roughly match Tesla's pricing per mile, or they're not going to have very many customers willing to pay 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much for the same service with the same wait time. To reiterate, it's still early days. Tesla has nowhere near enough vehicles on roads to have reasonable wait times with competitive pricing. But Tesla also happens to manufacture roughly 2 million vehicles per year. And most people would be stunned at how few vehicles are required to service every million people in a densely populated metropolitan area. My best guess, give or take, call it 3, maybe 4, worst case 5,000 vehicles required per million people in a reasonably well-populated city to service 100% of the existing rideshare market. Tesla produces more than that number of vehicles every single day. These price comparisons for the same trip are in the city of San Francisco, population less than 1 million people. In other words, Tesla could saturate this entire city, have enough vehicles operating to meet 100% of rideshare demand. By redirecting production from, let's just say, the Fremont factory, also in the same state as San Francisco, in California, redirecting a few days worth of production from a single factory, at which point wait times become irrelevant because 1-2 minutes max when you've got a Tesla Robotaxi ready to pick you up. At that point, Tesla can price as aggressively as they want to because wait times won't be too ridiculous because they have Robotaxis all the fuck over the city. And at this point, Uber, Waymo, Lyft are in big trouble unless, of course, they can magically press a special button that allows them to compete sustainably with Tesla on cost per mile. For example, Lyft and Uber would have to somehow delete their drivers. Waymo would somehow need to lean on their partners since Waymo themselves don't make vehicles and somehow convince the companies producing vehicles that Waymo's fitting out with all their sensors to not charge Waymo cost plus a little bit of a profit margin, but instead turn themselves into charities and give away their product or close enough. Even if it's costing them, give or take $100,000 to manufacture a vehicle, Waymo paying a little bit more than that, Waymo would somehow need to convince them, nah, we're not going to pay you $100,000 for the thing that costs you $100,000 to make. How about you just charge us maybe like $25,000 or less? That would be about what we need. Oh, and also, we would like you to be able to make a lot more of those things that we're now going to pay a fifth of what they actually cost you to produce just to stay competitive because we need a lot of them. Otherwise, Tesla has just eaten our entire business in this city and the next city and the next city. There is also one thing I'd like to note. As it stands today, Waymo currently charging, let's just call it roughly double what Uber and Lyft are charging customers for a comparable ride. Is it possible that consumers are willing, at least today, to pay a pretty steep premium to ride in an autonomous versus a human-driven vehicle? This seems to suggest, at least in the city of San Francisco, that consumers see an autonomous vehicle, e.g. no overly talkative driver if you'd prefer peace and quiet, no creep, no scent. People seem to see this as a premium product, superior service worth paying more for. Now, this puts us in a very interesting situation because if it's true that on average most consumers see an autonomous vehicle, e.g. no driver, as a better service. If that's true, by the way, it is. And in addition, there's a company there, maybe you'd call them Tesla, that can offer this superior service, not just for a comparable price to an inferior service like a human-driven vehicle, but a much lower cost. This is the recipe, the ingredients for massive disruption. A superior product and service for a much lower cost. Something big is brewing. Here's another comparison I saw on X. Same city, 2.9 mile journey. Tesla Robotaxi pricing $6.74 versus Uber $30.88. Waymo just over $40 and Lyft just over $20. So let's exercise our imagination here just for a moment and imagine a point in the future where Tesla, rather than having just a handful of robotaxis operating in the city of San Francisco, has hundreds, if not 1,000 or more, meaning you ain't ever going to see a 12-minute pickup time. At most, maybe 1-2 minutes. And imagine we still see pricing differentials like this. Uber, with relatively thin margins, roughly triple the cost, maybe quadruple. I mean, in this particular example, 4.5 times more expensive for the Uber. Lyft, roughly triple the cost of the Tesla Robotaxi. Waymo, 6 times the cost. If you have a comparable service, and it's important to understand, I'm not just talking about point A to point B, but wait times matter as well. If the customer just wants to get from point A to point B, and assume that wait times are equivalent across the board, just a minute or two at most, for all services, yet one of these services is half the cost, a third the cost, a quarter the cost. Do the math. Now, it is important to emphasize that it's early days. Obviously, not early days for Uber. In fact, it was more than a decade ago, back in 2014, that I took my first ever Uber ride in this very city in San Francisco, and I was stunned at how much more affordable it was versus a taxi and how quick the thing arrived. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes at most. I'm like, holy shit. Uber's had its run. Its reign as the king of ride hail. But what's really worth emphasizing is Uber at scale, with relatively thin margins on its service for this particular trip in this city at this time of day, mid-afternoon, over $10 a mile. Waymo, as far as we're aware, losing mountains of cash on their service, is charging more than Uber, but they do have a premium service, no driver, no smell, etc. You know it's true. Able to exist, maybe there's a novelty factor as well, charging, call it, almost 40% more than Uber for a comparable ride. And Lyft eking out some market share, undercutting Uber by a little bit and significantly undercutting Waymo. All three of these services, Uber, Waymo, Lyft, are established. Tesla will rapidly be able to match or even beat wait times across the board. As I said, Tesla redirected half a week of production from their Fremont factory to the city of San Francisco. They could have the whole market 1, 2, 3 minute max wait times for the whole city. But it's not just wait times, but cost per mile. No driver, the biggest cost of an Uber and a Lyft, gone. Able to put hardware on roads for a literal fraction the cost of Waymo, meaning they can charge way less per mile than Waymo for the premium service that consumers today are obviously willing to pay even more than a human-driven vehicle. It's G, folks. Tesla has a massive cost advantage just for the hardware alone. The world's best-selling vehicle is Tesla's Model Y. That exact same vehicle that they're selling to consumers, number one selling last year, this year, likely next year too, and making a profit selling, is also, imagine it, capable of operating autonomously. The exact same vehicles rolling off production lines in Giga, Texas, Fremont, California. The Model Y, that exact same vehicle can operate autonomously. And Tesla's producing these things in the mid $30,000 range. Waymo absolutely fucking cooked. For them to put a comparable vehicle that looks uglier than your girlfriend, let's be honest, on roads to do a comparable service, an autonomous ride, they're having to pay another company over $100,000. Even a potato can figure out. That's a very big cost disadvantage. So put a big cross through Waymo. They're toast. So let's talk about Uber and Lyft with human drivers. The biggest cost in providing a ride to a passenger on Uber or Lyft is, wait for it, are you ready? Paying the human who's doing the driving. Tesla Robotaxi, no human driver required. So you can put a cross through Uber and Lyft in terms of cost. None of these companies will be able to compete with Tesla on cost per mile when Tesla's at scale. It's just not possible. So if these companies, Uber, Waymo, Lyft, offering a comparable service, but unable to offer a comparable service for a comparable price, how will they have a viable business? How will they compete with Tesla Robotaxis as Tesla scales and can match or beat them on wait times and offer an equivalent or superior service for a fraction the cost and still make a profit? The answer is they can't. They can try to compete on cost per mile and sustain ever-mounting losses and eventually go bankrupt, or alternatively try to differentiate themselves, somehow position them as an incredibly super high-end, ultra-premium, giga deluxe service and not compete on cost per mile but charge significantly more per mile, convince customers that they're paying that massive premium for a good reason. Either way, I don't think it ends well for Uber, Waymo, Lyft, or taxis. Not here to tell you what I want to happen or what I hope will happen, but simply what will happen. Want more content? Early access? Bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 is awesome. I've been taking it daily now for more than 3 years. It's a great way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's packed full of vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus has prebiotics, probiotics, and adaptogens to improve gut health, regularity, and help your body handle stress. I'm always looking for an edge to help me feel and perform my best, which is why I haven't missed a day of AG1 for more than 3 years. Just try it and see how you feel. Click the link in the pinned comment or head to drinkag1.com/SMR and get yourself a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 travel packs.